Hello YouTube, this is Bowtied Media, and today I have a review of Gareth Emery's The Lasers. This is Gareth Emery's fourth studio album, the last one being in 2016, so it's been 4 years since we've seen a full-length studio album from Gareth Emery. Gareth Emery is primarily known for his trance and house styles of production, and within that subgenres more of progressive, so progressive house and progressive trance. But we've seen lately that Gareth Emery can actually venture into a lot more different EDM categories. I've seen a lot more indie dance from him lately, and even some chill out. So while he can produce tracks in other genres other than trance and house, that is primarily his subset and what he loves to do the most. But interestingly enough, this whole project is not trance or really house at all. There is one track of trance and there's some house kind of sprinkled in throughout, but a lot of it's other things. He's kind of produced one track that was more drum and bass, one that was more kind of a liquidy trap, and he's kind of branching out in what he normally does. But this project, The Lasers, is 10 songs, 31 minutes, and one prologue, so let's get into it. The first thing I have to say about this project, this album, The Lasers, is that it is boring and monotonous. There doesn't feel like there's a ton of oomph and real energy or passion really put in this project. And I think the prime example of this is Way to You, which is the second last track on The Lasers, and it just feels like a culmination of all the most boring parts of all the other tracks in the album put into one single thing. It feels like absolute filler, and I know a lot of people say that songs, and I do a lot, say that a song feels like it's filler. This is the most filler-ish song I think I've heard this year. Annabelle Turner is the vocalist for this entire project, going 30 minutes, pretty much having a vocal performance on every single track of the album. And while she's not specifically credited for her role, obviously she is in the deeper credits and more specifically on the YouTube videos, but without her vocal performance, this album I think would really suck. She adds a lot to it, and like I said earlier about it being boring, her vocals, I mean, they're not my favorite, but without them, this whole thing would just be very bad. The vocals are really what kept this album fresh and engaging, even though it's at a somewhat smaller level. Gareth Emery uses a robotic tint to Annabelle's vocals on the second track and the last track of this album, and I'm still a little torn on how I feel about them. I feel that robotic vocals can actually serve a huge, great purpose in what you're trying to convey narratively and I guess motifs-wise and how the song is produced stylistically. But this whole album doesn't feel like it needs a robotic vocal. It's more of like a fun, summertime, feely, like a more emotional, I guess, album in some sense and for some people. But this is just like, I don't know why you would add robotic vocals to this. There's some individual sections of each of these songs that I actually really enjoy the robotic vocals for, but other than that, they just feel very out of place. Listening to them individually, and I guess, or in a playlist, they're not bad. But when you listen to it as a whole album, you're just like, I'm confused why there's a robotic tint to these vocals. Why is there this auto-tuning? Why is, I don't understand. In my own personal listening experience, I feel like in terms of a whole album, you need to either go 100% or 0% on this weird vocal change and post-production on the vocals. And only going that 20% with this album just doesn't sit well with me. Continuing to talk about the vocal performances, having Annabelle Turner be on this entire project kind of allows the transition between songs to be a lot more natural and seamless, even though the entire project is not continuous. It's not, one song does not go immediately to the other. It even sounds like it just because the vocalists are there and it's the same kind of tone or tonality the entire time. I find it really interesting that Gareth Emery only had one trance track in this entire project, and that was You'll Be Okay. And to me it was a little underwhelming. I'll talk about that in a little second, but I think it's really interesting and kind of cool that he went and branched into some more different genres. Tracks like Little Celebrity and Gunshots have a lot more drum and bass and trap influences, respectively, between the two songs. And I don't think it's something that we've seen Gareth Emery really kind of branch into as of late. But I guess in hindsight, I don't think it really worked for the project. But in terms of trance tracks, You'll Be Okay is pretty boring. It's just 3.5 minutes and it doesn't feel like there's a lot of sustenance to it. To me, the trance genre needs to be this kind of long, drawn-out pre-chorus that kind of goes into this big drop that just feels epic and it feels like you just really want to go for it. But this track just isn't that. 2017 Saving Light is a great example of that, and 2019's Never Before. Both of these tracks are substantially better than You'll Be Okay. My favorite track from this LP is the final track, actually, and it is Elise, which is a song dedicated to his youngest daughter of the same name. And again, I don't love the robotic vocals. It does work in some sections of the song individually, but I think what really pieces this whole song together is that kind of subtle, almost muted bass line that is pretty prevalent throughout the whole thing that almost sounds like it's a little trancey. It's got that trance vibe to it. I mean, obviously Gareth Emery has a lot of trance inspiration in all of his tracks, and I think that kind of came out a little bit in this track, even though it's nothing like that genre. To me, you can really feel the passion and love that was put into the song, and when paired with the rest of the album, it kind of just shows how much the rest of it is just poorly produced and or just kind of boring. After listening to Elise kind of over and over again, you get a feeling that he could have done this with all of the rest of the songs on the album. And I mean, while they're not awful, they're kind of just there. And I would have wished that the whole thing sounded a lot more like Elise in terms of its production quality. This individual song is definitely not out of this world, but it's far above the rest of the tracks on this album. And it serves as a fantastic closer to an otherwise pretty meh album. And for these reasons, Gareth Emery's The Lasers is going to get a 5. But thank you guys so much for watching. I have been Bowtied Media. If you want me to review any other albums or any other kind of series of videos you want me to do, let me know in the comments below. Leave a like if you liked and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. And I will see you guys in another video.